Reading through the Bible in 1 year, June 11th, Deuteronomy 14:22 through 15:23, Psalms 56 through 57, Isaiah 35 through 36, and Matthew 14:13 through 36. You shall tithe all the yield of your seed that comes from the field year by year. And before the Lord your God, in the place that he will choose to make his name dwell there, you shall eat the tithe of grain, of your wine, and of your oil, and the firstborn of your herd and flock, that you may learn to fear the Lord your God always. And if the way is too far for you, so that you are not able to carry the tithe when the Lord your God blesses you, now because the place is too far from you, which the Lord your God chooses to set his name there, and you shall turn it into money, and bind the money up in your hand, and go to the place that the Lord your God chooses, and spend the money for whatever you desire, oxen or sheep, or wine or strong drink, whatever your appetite craves. And you shall eat there before the Lord your God, and rejoice, you and your household. And you shall not neglect the Levite who is within your towns, for he has no portion or inheritance with you. At the end of 3 years, or at the end of every 3 years, you shall bring out all the tithe of your produce of the land. Starting over. At the end of every 3 years, you shall bring out all the tithe of your produce in the same year, and lay it up within your towns. And the Levite, because he has no portion or inheritance with you, and the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow, who are within your towns, shall come and eat and be filled, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands that you do. At the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a release. And this is the manner of the release. Every creditor shall release what he has lent to his neighbor. He shall not exact it of his neighbor, his brother, because the Lord's release has been proclaimed. Of a foreigner you may exact it, but whatever of yours is with your brother, your hand shall release. But there will be no poor among you. For the Lord will bless you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance to possess, if only you will strictly obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all this commandment that I command you today. For the Lord your God will bless you as he promised you, and you shall lend money to nations, but you shall not borrow, and you shall rule over many nations, but they shall not rule over you. If among you, one of your brothers should become poor, in any of your towns within your land that the Lord your God is giving you, and you shall not harden your heart or shut your hand against your poor brother. But you shall open your hand to him and lend to him sufficient for his need, whatever it may be. Take care lest there be an unworthy thought in your heart, and you say, to the 7th year, the year of release is near, and your eye look grudgingly on your poor brother, and you give him nothing, since you're going to have to, since you basically lose whatever it is when that happens. And he cried to the Lord against you, and you be guilty of sin. You shall give to him freely, and your heart shall not be grudging when you give it to him. Because for this the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in all that you undertake. For there will never cease to be poor in the land. Therefore I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy and to the poor in your land. If your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, is sold to you, he shall serve you 6 years, and in the 7th year you shall let him go free from you. And when you let him go free from you, you shall not let him go empty-handed. You shall furnish him liberally out of your flock, out of your threshing floor, and out of your winepress. And as the Lord your God has blessed you, you shall give to him. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. Therefore I command you this today. But if he says to you, I will not go out from you, because he loves you and your household, since he is well off with you, then you shall take an awl, and shall put it through his ear on the door, into the door, and he shall be your slave forever. And to your female slave, you shall do the same. It shall not seem hard to you when you, let him go free from you. For at half the cost of a hired worker, he has served you the 6 years. So the Lord your God will bless you in all that you do. All the firstborn males that are born of your herd and your flock you shall dedicate to the Lord your God. You shall not do work with the firstborn of your herd, nor shear the firstborn of your flock. You shall eat it, you and your household, before the Lord your God year by year at the place that the Lord will choose. But if it has any blemish, if it is lame or blind or has any serious blemish, whatever, you shall not sacrifice it to the Lord your God. You shall eat it within your towns. The unclean and the clean alike you may eat, as though it were a gazelle or a deer. You shall only not eat its blood. You shall pour it out on the ground like water. Now Psalm 56 through 57. In God I trust. Be gracious to me, O God, for man tramples on me. All day long an attacker oppresses me. My enemies trample on me all day long, for many attack me proudly. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you, in God, whose word I praise. In God I trust. I shall not be afraid. What can flesh do to me? All day long they injure my cause. All their thoughts are against me for evil. They stir up strife. They lurk. They watch my steps as they have waited for my life. For their crime will they escape? In wrath, cast down the peoples, O God. You have kept count of my tossings. Put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book? Then my enemies will turn back in the day when I call. This I know, that God is for me. In God, whose word I praise. In the Lord, whose word I praise. In God I trust. I shall not be afraid. What can man do to me? I must perform my vows to you, O God. I will render thank offerings to you. For you have delivered my soul from death, yes, my feet from falling, that I may walk before God in the light of life. Let your glory be over all the earth. Be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me. For in you my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of your wings I take refuge, till the storms of destruction pass by. I cry out to God Most High, to God who fulfills his purpose for me. He will send from heaven and save me. He will put to shame him who tramples on me. Selah. God will send out his steadfast love and his faithfulness. My soul is in the midst of lions. I lie down amidst fiery beasts. The children of man, whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. They are a net for my steps. My soul was bowed down. They dug a pit in my way, but they have fallen into it themselves. Selah. My heart is steadfast, O God. My heart is steadfast. I will sing and make melody. Awake, my glory. Awake, O harp and lyre. I will awake the dawn. I will give thanks to you, O Lord, among the peoples. I will sing praises to you among the nations. For your steadfast love is great to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. Now Isaiah 35 through 36. The ransomed shall return. The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom like the crocus. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given to it, the majesty of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord and the majesty of our God. Strengthen the weak hands, make firm the feeble knees. Say to those who have an anxious heart, be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance, with the recompense of God. He will come and save you. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then the lame man shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the mute sing for joy. For waters break forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. The burning sand shall become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water. In the haunt of jackals, where they lie down, the grass shall become reeds and rushes. And a highway shall be there. It shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it. It shall belong to those who walk on the way. Even when they are fools, they shall not go astray. No lion shall be there, nor shall any ravenous beast come upon it. They shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. And the king of Assyria sent the Rabshakeh, from Lachish to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem with a great army. And he stood by the conduit of the upper pool on the highway to the washer's field. And there came out to him Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the secretary, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder. And the Rabshakeh said to them, Say to Hezekiah, Thus says the great king, the king of Assyria, On what do you rest this trust of yours? Do you think that mere words are strategy and power for war? In whom do you now trust, that you have rebelled against me? Behold, you are trusting in Egypt, that broken reed of a staff, on which will pierce the hand of any man who leans on it. Such is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who trust in him. But if you say to me, We trust in the Lord our God, is it not he whose high places and altars Hezekiah has removed, saying to Judah and to Jerusalem, You shall worship before this altar? Bit of history here. So Hezekiah was a good king. He did some terrible things in the end, but he was a good king to begin with. So when he came in, he made a lot of changes because the previous kings had allowed, quote, high places, meaning places where they go to worship idols and they worship false gods and demons, right? Where they would go up and they would worship on these places. And they would have their festivals and all of those things. So Hezekiah and, what's his name? Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, have heard about this, that when Hezekiah came in, he tore down all of those altars. So they're like, why is he tearing down the altars when they could go and worship their gods? Because again, these are pagan people who worship pagan gods that they see everywhere. Right? So that's what we're seeing. And that's why it's confusing for them. So like, why would you tear these down? It's like, look, he's being a bad king for you. He's taking away your places to worship. He's saying you could only worship here. But what was he really doing? He was really destroying their idols and bringing them back to the Lord. The God who saved them out of Egypt, carried them through Egypt, and gave them the land that they were in. He's bringing them back to the true God. Right? So again, this is the Rabshakeh. This is what he's seeing, and this is him relating to them. This guy is a terrible king. He's taking away your gods who are going to save you. And then he goes and tears that down as well. Let me see. Verse 8. So come now, make a wager with my master, the king of Assyria. That's Sennacherib. I will give you 2,000 horses if you are able to on your part to set riders on them. How then can you repulse a single captain among the least of my master's servants? Basically saying you don't even have the men for war to come against us. When you trust in Egypt for chariots and for horsemen. Moreover, it is without the Lord that I have come up against this land. Is it without the Lord that I have come up against this land to destroy it? The Lord said to me, go up against this land and destroy it. So, Then Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah said to the Rabshakeh, "Please, speak to your servants in Aramaic, for we understand it. Do not speak to us in the language of Judah within the hearing of the people who are on the wall." But the Rabshakeh said, "Has my master sent me to speak these words to your master and to you, and not to the men sitting on the wall, who are doomed with you to eat their own dung and drink their own urine?" Again, his whole point of going there is to basically say, look, just give up, right? Just come out and accept us, and we will we'll treat you kindly as we put you into slavery and servitude underneath us. Then the Rabshakeh stood and called out in a loud voice in the language of Judah, "Hear the words of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus says the king, do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you. Do not let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord by saying, the Lord will surely deliver us. This city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus says the king of Assyria, make your peace with me and come out to me. Then each of you will eat of his own vine, each one with his own fig tree, and each one of you will drink the water of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Beware lest Hezekiah mislead you by saying, the Lord will deliver us. Has any of the gods of the nations delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim? Have they delivered Samaria out of my hand? Who among all the gods of these lands have delivered their lands out of my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem out of my hand? Again, you hear what he's doing. He's trying to convince them by yelling at them in Hebrew, right? That they would, what's a good way to put this? Basically, he's just yelling at them in their own language, hoping that they would hear this, that their hearts would break, that they wouldn't support King Hezekiah, and that they would give the city up to him. That's all it is, just politics. But they were silent and answered him not a word, for the king's command was, do not answer him. Then Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the secretary, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder, came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn, and told him the words of the Rabshakeh. Now Matthew 14:13 through 36. Now when Jesus heard this, heard what? That John the Baptist had been killed. He withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. Now, when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, this is a desolate place, and the day is now over. Send the crowds away into the villages and buy food to go into the villages and buy food for themselves. But Jesus said, they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. They said to him, we have only 5 loaves here and 2 fish. And he said, bring them here to me. Then he ordered the crowds to sit on the grass, and taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds, and they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. So between the best guesstimates are between 7,000 and 12,000 people. Immediately, he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by waves, for the wind was against them. And in the 4th watch of the night, he came to them, walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, in Greek, duh, and said, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Which I'm pretty sure would have terrified them even more. And Peter answered, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come out on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink. And he cried out, "Lord, save me." And Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Now, you note how Jesus doesn't rebuke them for worshiping him. He doesn't stop them from worshiping him. He doesn't say, like we see in Revelation, right? When John is standing there talking to just another fellow servant of God, right? Who's an angel, but isn't God himself. And he tries to worship him. What does the angel say? He goes, no, hold on. I too am like you, a man. Or like Peter does with Cornelius. Or when he ends up with Cornelius and Cornelius gets down to worship him, he goes, no. I too am like a man. Sorry, I'm like you, a man. Don't worship me, right? But what does Jesus do? He receives their worship. This is something only God can do. All right, let's continue. And when they had crossed over, they came to land at Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized him, they sent around to all that region and brought to him all who were sick and implored him that he might only touch the fringe of his garment, or that they might only touch the fringe of his garment. And as many as touched it were made well. Again, that's the faith that they had. The faith that they had in God that he could do these things. This is the same theme that we see throughout all of the New Testament. That our salvation from whatever it is, our salvation from our sicknesses, our salvation from our sins, comes from faith in God. And we just saw that also with Peter walking on the water. Why? Because Jesus told him, "Come out." He's like, "Yeah, I can do this. Jesus said I could do it." But the minute that he got out there, he started realizing where he was, standing on the midst of the sea, very deep water. He got afraid because he quit believing in Jesus and he started focusing on himself and on his own issues. And what does Jesus say to him? "Oh, you of little faith. Why did you doubt?" So when they got to Gennesaret, those people trusted in Jesus so much that they said, even if we just touch the fringe of his garment, we'll be made clean. Or we'll be our sicknesses will be taken away. And that's exactly what happened. So until tomorrow, behold the word of the Lord.